Welcome back. In this video, I wanted to show you how we can set up a NAT gateway in our public subnet. We will also create two EC2 instances, one being in the private subnet with only a private IP address, and one in the public subnet with a private and public IP address. We will also need to have FileZilla installed on our local machine before starting this lab so that we can upload our PEM key to the EC2 instance in the public subnet. We are doing all of this so we can allow our private EC2 instance the ability to connect to the internet. And why would we want to do this? Well, this would allow our private EC2 instance the ability to download updates or packages that are needed to run a service or application. So this is definitely needed in the real world. With all that being said, let's get started. In the EC2 console, we will first launch our private EC2 instance. So let's click on Launch Instances. We can use the Amazon Linux 2 AMI, and we can also use the T2 micro instance, and then click on Next. For the network option, I will select my ZTM VPC, and for the subnet, I will select the private 1A subnet. Under the auto-assign public IP, I want to make sure this option is set to disable. We can now go to the Configure Security Group tab. For the security group option, I will select on the existing security group option, and we will select the ZTMSG security group we created in a previous lab. We can now click on Review and Launch, and then click on Launch. I will acknowledge that I have my EC2 lab key, and then click on Launch Instances. We can wait for that to launch, and then click on View Instances. Once we are back on the EC2 console, I will name my EC2 instance Private Instance, just so I can tell my instances apart. We can now launch our second instance, which will be the Jump server. So let's click on Launch Instances. We can use the Amazon Linux 2 AMI, and we can also reuse the T2 micro instance, and then click on Next. For the network option, I will select my ZTM VPC. And for the subnet, I will select the public 1A subnet. Under the auto-assign public IP, I want to make sure this option is set to enable. We can now go to the Configure Security Group tab. For the security group option, I will select the existing security group option, and we will select the ZTMSG security group, again, we created in a previous lab. We can now click on Review and Launch, and then click on Launch. I will acknowledge that I have my EC2 lab key, and then click on Launch Instances. We can wait for that to launch, and then click on View Instances. Once we are back in the EC2 console, I will name my EC2 instance Public Instance and then click on Save. We can now create our NAT gateway, so we can go to our VPC console tab, go to our left-hand side and scroll down till we see NAT gateways under Virtual Private Cloud. We can then click on the Create NAT Gateway button. In the new window, I will name my NAT gateway ZTM NAT GW. Under the subnet option, which subnet do you think we should put the NAT gateway in? That's right, it needs to go in the public 1A subnet because NAT gateways and NAT instances need to go in public subnets. For the connectivity type, we can leave it as public. For the Elastic IP Allocation ID, we can click on the Allocate Elastic IP button because currently we don't have an Elastic IP that we can select. After we click on it, we should see the Elastic IP appear here at the top with our address. Everything looks good to me, so I will click on Create NAT Gateway. Now I will go back to my EC2 console and click on my public EC2 instance, and then I will click on Connect. We will be using the EC2 Instance Connect option, so we can simply click on Connect in the new window. This should open up a new tab with the EC2 instance loaded. We will be coming back to this in just a second. Now that our two EC2 instances and our NAT gateway are created, we will have to upload our EC2 lab PEM key to our instance that is in the public subnet. So I will first go to the EC2 console, select my public instance, and then copy the public IP address for my EC2 instance. Now for this portion of the lab, I will be using FileZilla, which is a free application you can download from the internet. We will be using FileZilla to upload our PEM key to our public EC2 instance. So I will open up FileZilla and then click up here and then click on Settings. I will then select SFTP on the left hand side and then click on Add Key File. I will have my key file in my keys folder on my desktop, so I will select it from the directory and then click on Open. I will then click on OK, and for the host, I will paste in my public IP address of my EC2 instance. For the username, I will type in EC2-user. And for the port, I will put in port 22. I will then click on Quick Connect and select OK. After we are connected, we can upload the EC2 lab.pem key, which is on our left hand side, by right-clicking on the name and then clicking on Upload. We should now see the EC2-lab PEM key file in the EC2 directory on the right hand side. If we go back to our EC2 Connect page and type in ls, we should now see EC2-lab PEM key file listed. Now we have to go back to our EC2 console page. Select our private EC2 instance, and we need to copy the private IP address. Let's go back to our EC2 Instance Connect tab, and we can now run sudo su, which will give us enough privileges to connect to our private EC2 instance. We can now run ssh-i ec2-lab.pem ec2-user at the private instance address that we just copied. This will then prompt us asking if we are sure we want to connect. We can simply type yes and then hit enter. We should now be connected to our private EC2 instance. Now, if we try to ping 8.8.8.8, which is a Google address, and hit Control-C, we should see 100% packet loss because currently we don't have internet connectivity to this EC2 instance. So what should we do next? That's right, we need to configure our route table because we already have everything in place. So let's go to our VPC console tab, and then under Virtual Private Cloud, let's click on the route tables. Let's click on our private RT table we created in the last lab. In the new window, let's click on Edit Routes. Let's click on the Add Route button, and if we click in the box, we can then select 0.0.0.0.0/0 as the destination address. For the target, we can click in the box and select NAT Gateway. After that, we should see our ZTM NAT Gateway. So let's select it. Everything else looks good to me, so I will click on Save Changes. We should now be ready to ping google.com from the private instance. So let's go back to our EC2 Connect tab and let's try pinging 8.8.8.8 and let's see if we get a response. As you can see, we are now getting a reply from google.com because our instance is going out to the internet through the NAT Gateway. Pretty cool, right? I hope in this video you learned more about NAT gateways. I'll see you in the next video.